This introduction includes 2 screens which describe high-level narcissists and sadists. Judge Lucinda Masterton is both a narcissist and a sadist. Evidence of her psychopathology is presented in the video clips in this movie. Extreme injustice. Objectification was theme in this divorce. Defendant humiliated. Defendant 18 months without a car while my wife had 3 cars. She controlled.
Where are we on the
all.
Honda?
The Honda, I mean, I know that Ross doesn't want it, but where that leads us, I don't know. Like, he didn't ask Kathy to buy it for him, she bought it for him, he's not going to refuse to take it, you know, to drive throughout the pendency of this action because, you know, it was that or a beat up white pickup truck, and that was obviously nicer, but for, it's not worth $11,000 to him. And so, and Kathy bought it. Like, it also seems as though, I don't even know if they're even trying to attribute any marital value to that. It seems like maybe they're claiming that that's something that Kathy bought with her 2009.
We are saying she paid for it. She paid for it during the period of separation. We're not asking that the court consider the period of separation. We're saying it's $11,000, that's the value of it, and she bought it for Ross because you can see the emails, and you have them. Just that one that went into the record on the Camry. He says, I don't have a vehicle. Brandon and I are sharing a vehicle. So Kathy went out and bought a vehicle, and he's been using it for the last year and a half. And now he doesn't want it. Well, she sure doesn't need it. So what's he going to do? What's he going to do? So this is what her position is, just like she testified to yesterday. If she doesn't get that car to Ross, Brandon is not going to take the Mercedes to college because that leaves Ross without a vehicle. And Kathy wants him to take the Mercedes so he'll have a vehicle in college.
But I mean, Ross can get his own vehicle.
Well then, okay, here's what I want to do. I'll award him the Honda at $11,000. He can trade it in, it's his.
Kathy purchased this car without my knowledge and consent, knowing the judge loved to objectify me. My wife would of course never spend $11,000 if she thought she would risk losing that money. Everyone knows if you sell a car and buy a new one, you will lose at least 20% of the value.
We expressly acknowledged at that hearing that the seal that's on this record, the scope of it, does not apply to non-minor children related.
You know, I understand that, but that was the concern.
This judge sanctioned my attorney, charging him $2,000. After this incident, my attorney balked at my future requests, saying he was afraid of a sanction. The order following this hearing says that my wife would ultimately decide sanction. So you can see the judge is telling my attorney to play ball with my wife or else.
This shows the development of Kathy's tax avoidance scheme.
When he transferred this from them to Ross, you know, this is actually in Ross Chatfield LLC.
Right. He cooked up a little corporation for it.
If he hadn't done that, and it was in Ross Chatfield, and we had to do a quitclaim deed, Kathy would take this at $60,000 basis. Mm-hmm. But because they've refinanced and put money into it, we think that by doing a regular deed, warranty deed, it will be valued at $190,000. And she won't have that tax. So that's why we wanted to put quitclaim deed or other similar instrument.
Okay.
However, you know, Kathy's brother does this for a living. I got to think we can rely on him.
Figure out the best way to do it.
To figure out so that she doesn't have to pay taxes.
Okay.
Since Kathy couldn't get her brother to write this deed, she hired a different lawyer to get the just fix the code violations. She remodeled the whole building.
In my position that it was unreasonable that I would have to pay it at all.
Okay, well, all right. I understand your argument. What about the specific costs? Do you have any concerns about the specific costs? She's come up with about $3,200 worth. If you look at the bills, she's not charging for everything. She's got everything itemized and attached to the reference to the code violation.
Well, I had several prices myself done, and Kathy has paid 4 or 5 times as much as the prices that I got from licensed contractors.
Well, how come you didn't have it done?
She had control of it. She locked me out of the building.
I mean, how come you didn't have it done a year ago?
I didn't have the money. And these, like this, she brings up this furnace problem. That wasn't a code violation. The fact that somebody found a cracked heat exchanger, that's wear and tear you'd expect over 20 years. So I wouldn't be charged for wear and tear on a building. And the fact that she locked me out and I couldn't perform any work, that would raise the cost 5 times. You know, this universal maintenance is owned by Rick Bryant, her brother-in-law.
Could have replaced that furnace and done all the code repairs for less than $7,000.
The judge ordered me to pay $22,000. My wife used her brother-in-law who overcharged for his work. I did not do the repairs earlier, since wife spent the money I borrowed to do that on other things. A year earlier, judge ordered wife's spending money I borrowed to do this job for other things.
A key characteristic of a narcissist is the use of magical thinking.
Next clip, judge says to defendant it is magic, which is a narcissist response.
Dehumanization is exactly what it sounds like. A narcissist will mentally strip away everything about someone that might be considered a human trait. In their mind, they will try to turn them from living, breathing individuals into mere abstract entities that they can manipulate and use like they would anything else in their environment.
I think it drives Joe crazy. No, I think it must. So.
For narcissist sadists, triumph is their ultimate aim, even if someone has to get hurt in the process. They are interested in hurting, degrading, demeaning, and inflicting agony upon others. And making someone else grovel is not only the major way sadists secure the dominant position in their relationships, but also an activity they truly
Incredibly
enjoy.
complicated, obviously. I don't want, you know, I mean, everybody gets all up in arms about it, but the point is, I think it's compounded by the fact that Ross doesn't, you know, I believe you that Ross got stuff in December and didn't know what to do with it and round filed it or something, you know, that would not be surprising. So.
Judge Masterton performed on her stage, frequently waving her arms, ranting. She'd imagine a party might do something demonstrating her magical insight and denigrating the party.
Judge Masterton is an enforcing sadist. These sadists hold official positions like a police officer, warden, college dean who seek out perceived rule breakers, and by doing so she exercises the worst punishments she can give out for an individual case.
About the person I am appointing is Dwayne Osborne. Dwayne is the person who has taught probably everybody else in this state how to be a guardian ad litem. He suffers no fools, and he has talked probably to more kids on a one-to-one basis in this role than probably everybody else combined. And he knows when kids have been coached, when kids have been pressured. He has an amazing radar for that. So my caution to you both is don't.
In most of the hearings, Judge Masterton lies, but she lies by exaggerating the truth. Narcissists exaggerate in order to try to look more important or more powerful.
The judge shows her prejudice. She says, I make things up as I go along.
Just, you know, he's got to be more careful. He's got to pay attention more. And this has been a problem with Ross throughout. Perhaps if I didn't have the whole history of this case, Mr. Wolf. But Ross kind of makes everything up as he goes along.
The following movie clip is an example of a narcissist judge exhibiting her body language, waving her arms and smiling, making fun of and shaming a party by predicting what he is likely to do.
Now, this is where I'm going to say this out loud, because I don't want Ross coming in here with waving a bill that then Kathy paid, and Ross is saying he ought to get paid back for it. And Ross is just disorganized enough that he might do that. So I want...
This judge is showing how she expresses inappropriate effect to her office as judge. MSN report. Experts say we are in an epidemic of narcissism. They constantly denigrate others.
In this video clip, the judge sanctions my attorney.
Significant time responding to what could only be characterized, in her words, I agree, as a rambling mess from you. It was very difficult for me to even understand what the heck you were asking for.
I mean, there's two places where I asked for the court to amend the order.
But I didn't understand why. It didn't make any sense, and it still doesn't make any sense, because in fact, there's nothing that has happened to bring this to the court's attention. That's why it's a waste of time, Mr. Wolf. Nothing happened.
Your Honor.
Now, you all then used it as an opportunity through your client's affidavit to sling a bunch of insults, which then got into the court record.
This judge sanctioned my attorney, charging him $2,000. After this incident, my attorney balked at my future requests, saying he was afraid of a sanction. The order following this hearing says that my wife would ultimately decide sanction. So you can see the judge is telling my attorney to play ball with my wife or else.
Of course, I'm not privy to that. What I am privy to is the fact that he wouldn't cooperate with her when I ordered him to. And
this is another example of how extremely over-controlling Judge Masterton behaved in disregard of me. Several court documents show that Judge Masterton took revenge because I would not obey her as God. Without my knowledge and consent, Martha attempted to involve my adult daughter in this divorce.
There exists an abundance of evidence that Judge Masterton was party to corruption.
The following is one of many examples showing how the judge is controlled by the cult of the court. The following movie clip is an example of a narcissist judge exhibiting her body language, waving her arms and smiling, making fun of and shaming a party by predicting what he is likely to do.
Now, this is where I'm going to say this out loud, because I don't want Ross coming in here with waiving a bill that then Kathy paid, and Ross is saying he ought to get paid back for it. And Ross is just disorganized enough that he might do that. So I want...
The next video clip show both narcissism and sadism exhibited. Her sadism is reflected in her punishing defendant because of her narcissistic imagination. True, so essentially she is showing her orders are based upon her magically thinking, and not on evidence presented.
May I be heard, Your Honor, please?
Pardon?
May I be heard on just one
Okay.
question I've got about that? The $86,000 and the $15,000. I think it's undisputed the $86,000 that Kathy supposedly loaned to Ross. She was loaning him marital property, and the court is saying he should pay back marital property now.
What happened is that came out of the equity of the house.
Marital property, Your Honor.
Sure, and what I'm doing is paying him back marital property. He has to pay back marital property. I'm crediting it against the mortgage.
Let me do this. But this is in the absence of any indication that he did anything with any one penny of that money other than try to make money in the business. There's no evidence.
Okay, let me talk about it. Maybe I do need to address that. The reason that I am giving Kathy a larger percentage of everything is because I believe that what Ross did over the course of many years is squander inordinate amounts of money.
Notice in last clip Judge Masterton ignored responding to my attorney on the issue he objected. This is one of many times this judge ignored the rule of law and based her decision on imagination. Clearly, this judge has already decided the outcome of this trial based on her imaginations. Next clip, the judge is again predicting the future, saying the answer is to totally control me. My attorney rejects her. She is mad and says she is going to put me on the street in 6 months.
With it. I don't know that that helps us. I mean, I feel as though we're kind of in a quandary here, because how can I ignore the fact that he's not going to have any income now, and that he's walked away from an income producing property? So I think
you wouldn't. I think you would deem him to have that income, whatever it is, if he asked for maintenance.
Well, then the problem is then he can't ask for maintenance. I mean, so we're sort of hoisted on our own petard here.
I understand. What can I do?
Well, I think
here's what I think needs to happen. Now, this is totally out of left field, guys. I think Ross has really deteriorated. In my view, watching him testify yesterday was a very sad experience. This is a man who is losing his marbles at a rapid rate. I think that this litigation has been terrible for him. I think that the emotional and intellectual toll on him as a consequence of the unremitting pressure of this litigation has been extraordinary and sad. And I feel terrible about it. It's a very sad thing. He is a shell of what he was 2 years ago, and he wasn't completely tightly wrapped 2 years ago. Whatever the number is at this point, I'm concerned about handing him anything that isn't locked up in some way that he has. I think it would be irresponsible. Frankly, $7 some kind of an arrangement that pays him an annuity. I mean, this is Kathy's business. You know, if you could figure out some sort of a settlement here that would give Ross an income from an annuity, what a spectacular idea that would be. How original is that? I'm sure that they've thought about this a million times. I don't know that, but that's her business. How could they not have?
As certain as I am that Ross is not going to ask the court for maintenance, I am much more certain he's not going to entertain that at all.
All right.
I would think that is something that might work in a lot of circumstances. I think that's unfortunately something I don't put any percent chance of anything like that.
Well, my fear is that Ross is going to be a street person in a half a year.
In next clip, the judge ordered me to get an attorney within 7 days. This order came immediately after I filed a complaint against my wife in this court. I realize now that the judge needed me to get an attorney because she could control him but not me.
The judge is not going to talk to me anymore. I'll have to have an attorney, and I got a week to get one.
Be addressed.
Well, if it's agreeable with you, Judge, that we can do this as soon as I get an attorney, we can talk about it.
Well, that's not, I can't let you do it that way, because you could say you can't get an attorney for 10 years. I'm not going to say that, okay? I will say that I would like you to be back in here next week with an attorney so that we can talk about all this.
Oh, I know.
Okay, let me get a calendar and make sure we...
In this next clip, this judge says I should not get anything.
The judge is telling my attorney it won't do him any good to continue to try to do discovery.
I will be upfront with you all. I think Ross is going to have a really, really hard time saying that he is entitled to anything, certainly after Brandon emancipated, that Kathy earned. I think
In next clip, Anita says that I filed to get freedom of speech because judge had ordered not free.
Attorney Miss Britton is criticizing my attorney, Joe Wolf, for motioning freedom of speech should be permitted. The judge had ruled that we wouldn't have the right for freedom of speech.
On December the 2nd, he filed a motion to allow freedom of speech. On January the 5th...
What is beyond belief is that a judge would rule that I would not have freedom of speech.
I had to file this since judge ordered us to family counseling, but we were not allowed to talk there. This shows how over-controlling and crazy this case had become. Next clip, judge tells my attorney that since he will not do what she wants, he will not get paid.
You're over-practicing the case, in summary. Okay? Her client's under oath. Her client has answered these questions, it sounds like. You've gotten your answers. You can practice this however you want to. I'm not telling you how to practice the case. You do what you want to. But I will tell you, I'm not going to give you fees for this stuff. Let's just be clear about that.
Basically, the judge is telling my attorney that he doesn't need to work so hard on this. She's already figured out how it's going to turn out.
Next clip show collusion with Crystal and Judge, which cost me $150,000.
It's absolutely clear that Crystal and Joe have colluded.
What I told you in court doesn't necessarily have to be. If people want to hear it, they can get the record, but, you know, I think what we can probably do is just say that I'm not awarding attorney fees based on the way the case was progressed, and I think that's probably enough.
And if you're going to take that issue up on appeal, you have a...
Joe left me holding the bag when Joe sued me for $150,000, and he won.
This shows a conspiracy which follows trial when judge wanted my distribution controlled. But this court video was purposefully erased so to hide evidence. I have witnesses who told me that this court often edits or deletes court videos. Very difficult to file an appeal if you have no proof of what happened in court.
Clear that part of this video, the end of it, has been deleted.
Yeah. Joe, you would be doing Ross such a disservice if you let him take this money without some kind of restriction on it.
This is collusion.
Next clip, judge says no complaints against Kathy unless approved by counsel first. I complained to the Department of Insurance and the Child Protection Agency. Under the law, I have the right to make these complaints.
This letter is from a forensic expert witness.
Nuts. No more complaints about Kathy to anybody. Unless you have sought counsel first.
Next clip shows this judge exaggerating, saying I should not call 911 for my son threatening suicide. My son died because my wife would not call 911 for him.
Some stuff that you're doing that is completely inappropriate. I'm talking. The fact that you're constantly calling 911, what's that about? That's just nonsensical.
Next clip shows the judge and plaintiff attorney conducted ex parte, causing court order prejudice.
It's prejudicial, and it makes no sense.
And I've explained this, that my reasoning was based largely on Ms. Britton's representation to me that this particular property is a barnacle on her ability to settle this case, to make because it is out there on Kathy's credit, and it hamstrings her from making an offer. That is what am I understanding that correctly?
Understood me correctly.
This is an example that shows how things are done in this court.
Next clip is second example of ex parte. This one is a conspiracy to cause me bankruptcy.
Joe, you would be doing Ross such a disservice if you let him take this money without some kind of restriction on it.
Was cut off. I asked the court for the rest of the video and was not able to get it. The clerk told me that often the court deletes complete hard drives.
In this next clip, the question of sexual arousal and sadism has operated in court. At the minimum, this judge's behavior is not at all within normal boundaries.
Sexual sadism disorder is the condition of experiencing sexual arousal in response to the extreme pain, suffering or humiliation of others. There is evidence that Judge Masterton has exhibited extreme sadism, and the choice of her wording in reference to males suggests some arousal may have been present or associated with these instances.